Yo, what's up guys? Muzzafuzza here, and today we're playing some more Diablo 3 beta. I'm on my Demon Hunter, and today we're going to be doing an active skills guide for the Demon Hunter. I'm going to be covering all of the active skills for the Demon Hunter, and we're at the New Tristram Ferry, but sadly I can't take any of the boats. They're not in working order, and I'm with my Templar. He's just chilling. But like I said, we're going to be talking about all the active skills for the Demon Hunter, including grenades, which I'll throw a few out right now. There's some sexy grenades. We got Shadow Power, which, that lagged a little bit, but it put Shadow Power on, gave me a nice set of purple wings. We've got Chakrams, which I love throwing these things. These are like giant frisbees of death. And then lastly, I'm using Elemental Arrow, which is a giant flaming arrow of destruction. And we're going to be going over all the active skills for the Demon Hunter in order, and I'm going to talk about which ones I like, which ones I don't like, and stuff like that. So let's get it started. Starting off at the tippy top with our Hatred Generator skills. Looks like we got 6 of those. I'm going to start at the very beginning with Hungering Arrow. The first skill that you learn in this game as a Demon Hunter generates 3 hatred and fires a magical arrow that seeks additional targets. This arrow bounces from target to target and does not too much weapon damage, and actually in the last patch of Diablo 3, the beta anyways, you used to be able to see exactly how much weapon damage each individual active skill would do, but they took that out for some reason. None of them really show exactly how much damage they're going to do. I don't know why they took them out. They might be working on the damage of each individual ability during the beta. I know there's a lot of stuff that they don't have ready for the full game release, but I'll just give you guys personal experience on which abilities I like more than others. So as far as Hungering Arrow goes, I don't really use it anymore, but it is cool if you want to see arrows bouncing between targets. Moving on to the second ability in the Hatred Generator tree, Evasive Fire. Generates 4 hatred, costs 4 discipline if you backflip, fire at an enemy and perform an evasive backflip if the target is close. So if there's a target within 5 yards, it'll send you backflipping away. That's probably the most useful thing about this ability. It does a decent amount of damage, but it does kind of take quite a while to fire. Like, it doesn't have a very fast fire speed, this ability, and I think that also depends on the fire speed of your main hand weapons, so it's probably a little faster now that I've got 2 one-handed dual-wield crossbows. But I don't really use this one anymore as well because I prefer using grenades, but we'll get to that later. Moving on to the third Hatred Generator active skill, Bola Shot. Generates 3 hatred, fires a bola that wraps around a target and explodes. Now, I don't know what a bola is, but it's basically a group of bombs on a string that wraps around your target and then blows up, doing AoE damage to everybody within the explosion. This is pretty cool. It looks pretty awesome when you wrap it around somebody and it explodes, but once again, not one that I'm using right now just because I prefer grenades right now. Entangling Shot generates 4 hatred, imbues an arrow with shadow energy, slowing up to 2 enemies. This one could be pretty useful for PvP and arena if you want to slow somebody down that's jumping on you with melee and trying to chase you. Having something that can slow people down is pretty good, so Entangling Shot, I can see it being useful in PvP, but not so much for PvE and dungeon raiding and all that good stuff that I'm interested in. Moving on to the 5th Hatred Generator skill, Grenades. This is the one I'm using right now. Throws 3 grenades that bounce and explode, and it generates 3 hatred. So I'll show you this right now. There's some grenades, there's some more grenades. They're basically little spiky red grenades that go in all directions and explode, and you can actually, if you have your mouse a little bit farther away, you can throw these pretty goddamn far. So it's a pretty good range attack, and I like having grenades on my Demon Hunter. I think it's sweet. And moving on to the 6th and final Hatred Generator active skill, generates 5 hatred. It's called Spike Trap, a deadly trap that explodes on contact once armed. So you can basically set up little traps to kite people into. Obviously, the Demon Hunter is it's a kiting class. You're going to be wanting to run around all the time. You're going to have high movement speed, and you're going to be doing mostly ranged attacks and not having too much health. Not as much health as like a barbarian or a witch doctor. So you're going to want to be kiting people around, and there's no real better way to do that than with traps and things that slow people down, and I think Spike Trap should be pretty sweet, but it only unlocks at level 16, and you can't get to level 16 in the beta, so I haven't seen that skill yet, but it looks pretty awesome. Moving on to the second active skill tree for the Demon Hunter, it's the Hatred Spender tree, and this has got a lot of different abilities. It looks like 9 total active skills. So let's get started with the very first one that you learn, Impale. Costs 25 hatred, throw a knife and impale an enemy. This one is pretty badass. I remember when it used to show the weapon damage for each individual ability. This one was like 225% or 235%, something like that. Weapon damage, so that's really high weapon damage, and it does a lot of damage. But to give you guys an idea of how much 25 hatred is, I've only got 125 hatred total, so I could only cast 5 impales in a row before I run out of my main resource. So the hatred spender active skills are usually the ones that are going to be doing the most damage, but they're also the most resource heavy for the demon hunter. So moving on to the second one, rapid fire. Costs 10 hatred, continually fire a stream of arrows, movement breaks concentration and decreases hatred. This one is pretty badass. It unleashes like a red stream of arrows that just keeps firing in rapid fire, and if you move, it breaks your concentration, decreases your hatred, gives you a little hatred drop off. But if you're just doing rapid fire, you can rapid fire for like 15 seconds before your hatred seems to run out. So this one's pretty cool. I used it quite a bit. It's good for burning down and DPSing down some enemies. Moving on to the third one, and this one I actually have on right now, the Chakram, or the Chakram, or whatever you want to call it. Costs 10 hatred, releases a spinning blade of death that slices through enemies. These things are fucking frisbees of doom. And to give you guys a little look-see at the Chakram, I'll throw one. Here, come on. Let me, looks like I gotta exit the skills menu. I'll back up, but this is a Chakram, or Chakram, or whatever you want to call it. These are just crazy frisbees that you throw in one direction, and it just slices through all the enemies in that direction. And it's awesome. It's probably one of my favorite abilities. It's not really that, I don't know how to explain it. It's not that useful for certain situations because you can't really see exactly where it's going to go, but it's good when you're fighting big groups of people and you want to take down a big chunk of their health with a spinning frisbee of death. Moving on to the fourth active skill in the hatred spender tree, Elemental Arrow. Costs 10 hatred, unleashes a fiery arrow that pierces through enemies. This one, like I said, I'm using it right now, Elemental Arrow. It's just a fiery arrow. I'm shooting a few right now for you guys to check out. But it goes through any amount of enemies. So if you got a bunch of enemies lined up in one line and you shoot a crazy elemental arrow and you manage to get a crit, you can get mighty blows. You can get 5-in-1s. I've done it with this skill. So I really like the elemental arrow. I like the fiery arrows. I think it's badass. Moving on to the fifth active skill in the Hatred Spender tree, and the first one that I actually don't have because it requires level 14. Fan of Knives. Costs 20 hatred, unleash a flurry of knives and strike all nearby enemies. So this is an AoE attack. It sends all nearby enemies a flurry of knives in their face. And I'm guessing it goes a full 360 degrees around your character, so it just shoots out in all directions, sends knives flying for only 20 hatred. So that's pretty cool. Moving on to Multi-Shot. Costs 15 hatred, fire a massive volley of arrows in an arc. Now, I don't know how this one's going to work. It says in an arc, which is a pretty cool idea. But it only costs 15 hatred, which means you can do lots of multi-shots. And that should be pretty interesting, especially when you get a total of 6 skills. At level 24, you have 6 skills at your disposal, which means your bar down here, your quick bar for your abilities will be all the way filled up, along with your left and your right mouse click being filled up with abilities as well. So I think multi-shot could be pretty cool if it fires a really big volley of arrows in an arc, but I don't really know how the arc works. So I guess we'll just have to see on that one. Moving on to Strafe. Shoot at nearby enemies while moving. Costs 15 hatred. So this is a moving ability, a strafing ability, so you can shoot your crossbows while you're strafing around. Once again, I don't really know how this one works. It's not very detailed. It doesn't say how much damage it does or what exactly it does. All I know is that you can shoot people while moving, so it's kind of like a drive-by. And I will leave it at that. Moving on to Cluster Arrow. Costs 50 hatred. Fire an explosive arrow that fragments into cluster bombs. This one costs 50 hatred. That's a lot of hatred. That's only 2 cluster arrows that I can use before I have to regenerate some hatred to cast another one. So this is a big, big explosion. It fragments. The arrow itself is an explosive arrow that turns into cluster bombs. So I'm guessing it'll be multiple explosions, multiple amounts of damage, and that's one of the active skills for the Demon Hunter that I'm definitely looking forward to. It sounds awesome. Moving on to the final Hatred Spender active skill. Costs 40 hatred and it has a 30-second cooldown. It's called Rain of Vengeance. unleash a torrent of arrows from the sky. So I'm guessing that you just choose an area that you want to rain down arrows, and it just does a huge volley of arrows from the sky onto that area. And I'm guessing it does a lot of damage because it also costs 40 hatred, which is a lot of hatred. You can cast 3 of these in a row, but it does have a 30-second cooldown, which means you're going to be waiting for that hatred to regenerate anyways. But you get that one at level 29. Moving on to the third and final skill tree for the active skills on the Demon Hunter. It's the Discipline tree, and the first ability that you learn is Caltrops. It costs 8 Discipline, and it places a trap that snares and slows enemies. So this is one of those traps that you can use to slow down people, to kite people around, probably useful mostly for arena and PvP. The second ability is called Vault, costs 10 Discipline, and it causes you to tumble acrobatically to avoid attacks. It sends you flying like 10 yards in front of yourself, so you can jump around, you can duke around, and I don't even really think it has a cooldown. It doesn't say it has a cooldown, so you can jump all over the place if you want to spend your Discipline. Moving on to the third one, Shadow Power. This is the one that I've got on right now, and I'll cast it just so you guys can check it out. Gives you purple angel wings, costs 20 Discipline, and it makes you attack faster for 8 seconds. I think it doubles your attack speed for 8 seconds, so it's really useful if you want to crank out that extra DPS, that extra damage per second. And I'm all about the damage, so that's what I like to use. Moving on to the fourth one, Companion, costs 10 Discipline, summon a Raven Companion from the shadows. This one I wish I could play with right now because it sounds sweet. You can summon a Raven to fight with you. It's kind of like a Necromancer or a Witch Doctor would have different things that it can summon to fight with it. This one is for the Demon Hunter, and it gives you a little Raven Companion. I don't know if you can trick them out with gear or change it up with rune stones. You can socket the ability with rune stones to change the Raven. Because you can socket any ability in this game, and socketing runestones changes the ability into different effects. So I can't wait to see what that does to the Raven Companion. The fifth skill in the Discipline tree is called Smokescreen, costs 15 Discipline, vanished from sight for a limited time. So if you're about to die, you can just smokescreen out of there, take off, vanish from sight, and I don't think enemies will attack you for a few seconds when you use your Smokescreen. So Smokescreen sounds pretty awesome. You get that one at level 18. Moving on to Sentry, costs 10 Discipline, summon a turret that automatically attacks nearby enemies. This is cool. You get a little Sentry turret that'll do damage for you, and when you get higher levels, it'll actually shoot rockets. You can boost the rocket damage with passive skills, do all sorts of cool shit. Moving on to Marked for Death, costs 6 Discipline, marks an enemy to take additional damage from attacks. So you can mark like a boss mob. If you guys are doing a dungeon and you want to take down the boss, you can mark the boss, or like in the last Diablo, in Diablo 2, there was a boss that would like multiply himself. There would be clones of him, so you could actually mark the ones that's the real boss, so that you guys don't focus your damage on the fake one. So I think this Marked for Death mark could actually be pretty useful for certain things. And you could also use it in PvP to mark who you want to focus down. So that's got all sorts of different uses. But moving on to the final active skill in this active skills guide for the Demon Hunter, the final one in the Discipline tree, it's called Preparation. It's got a 120-second cooldown. It costs no Discipline because it focuses and instantly restores all your Discipline. So if you're using a bunch of these Discipline abilities and you want to use Preparation, it'll instantly restore all your Discipline, and you'll be able to cast all those abilities once again. So you don't get it till level 25, but once you do get it, this one could be really useful for being able to recast Mark for Death a bunch of times, or putting down more sentries, or smoke screening out of there, setting caltrops, vaulting, whatever it is in the Discipline tree. You can use Preparation to kind of reset all your Discipline and be able to cast all those immediately. But you guys, this has been Muzzafuzza. I hope you guys enjoy these guides. I have a lot of good Diablo 3 content coming out on the way. I'm really loving this game. I hope you guys are too. If you like this video, drop me a like, maybe a favorite, maybe a comment. Anything you can do to support the video would be appreciated. If you guys want to follow me on Twitter or Facebook, they're down below in the description, along with a playlist to all my Diablo 3 videos in one little playlist, so you guys can check them out in case you've missed anything. This has been Muzzafuzza, and I will see you guys next time. Grenades! More grenades! More grenades!